Today, Occupy Ted Wheeler's apartment and oh, the tweets. More coming right up. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Black Spring with Autumn on your Monday. Hope everybody's doing well, and I do apologize for the lateness today. Just trying to work a few things out around here. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be here with you as always. If you are driving by or you're not decided whether you're going to come in at all, I thank you so much for considering Black Spring with Autumn news and politics. So I also want to take time to shout out the loyal patrons as well as you, the subscribers. And also thank you, Periscope followers. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. And you guys are the difference. Shout out to Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, Cold War Jesus, Let the Truth Be Told, and AZ Infidel. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. Shout out to Let the Truth Be Told and Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you guys so much for coming in. And just once again, I just want to say this once more. This will be, if you are new to the channel, then you may not have any concerns, or you may not have any issues, or you might be curious. But for those of you that are not so much regulars around here, I encourage you to take a look at the community tab and those, what do you say, housekeeping or rules of engagement. We've been getting a little bit more traffic, which is great, which I absolutely embrace. And I'm happy to have each and every one of you here. But it's just nice that people observe, that they, observe the house rules or the rules of engagement. I enjoy having everyone here, and I'd like to move on because there's many things to move on to, but I will not make this a lengthy stream as it is a Monday, and there are just so many things going on, and I don't want to pile on too much. It is my goal to maybe bring those things that are a little bit, even there's some things that are under the shadow that still get lost, that there's even more that can be lost in these tumultuous times, or with such a confluence of things going on. We have hurricanes, and shout out and prayers to any of you that may be involved or may be affected by the hurricanes over the weekend. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you guys so much for taking care with the channelytics and for all that you do, as we stay in the fight and at times, play reindeer games. So if you appreciate you guys for taking care with the likes, unlikes, and being sure that you're still subscribed, and we're available if you feel the notion to throw caution to the wind, that you share out the stream. So I thank you so much for that, Chrysler Imperial H, and I thank you so much for all your support and all that you do. Thank you so much for coming in. So we have of course we have a lead-in story, but I want to give you the general stories that we're going to cover. And we'll start with our lead-in with the Ted Wheeler apartment occupy that happened. Of course, that comes with demands from the mob. So, Ted Wheeler, what can I say? When will you learn? Will you ever learn? I mean, I don't know how this works. I don't know how that works when you cave to the mob who, they're following a Marxist revolutionary mantra. So shout out to everybody in the stream. And so we'll get back to that. So we're dealing with the Wheeler occupy, or the occupants of the Wheeler apartment over the weekend, as well as a CNN Twitter conflict in which they are a bit banning or not allowing the sharing of the coverage of the CDC report. And we're going to take a look at a couple of tweets We're gonna dig into the tweet pile, and we'll deal with 2 specific tweets involving James Woods and Vernon Jones. So that's gonna be our centerpiece, but we have, of course, our lead-in story. So thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for all that you do. Chrysler Imperial says he's negotiating with domestic terrorists. Well, yes, I've referred to these people as paramilitaries or these Marxist revolutionaries. And in fact, I said specifically last week or the week before, my, how time flies, how the DNCs, they had this theme. They had a closing theme on the first night. Now, the first night is usually any performance. You really want to set the tone and you really want to, can I say, knock it out of the park and, and have people hanging on to your presentation. Well, they chose to do that with something that was a bit quite revolutionary. And in fact, I said somewhere else that, the only thing they were missing was Che Guevara uh, in their presentation. Because in the presentation, I think the American flag appeared to be green and red. And I mean, the whole presentation was full of posters and protest and propaganda. So that's the tone that they set. And, we'll see what that looks like. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. So I'm going to start out also with what I call here on the channel, the opening statement. And in that, it's going to kind of deal with the premise here. We'll kind of deal with propaganda ministries, media. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? I mean, obviously, Americans are losing lives in the streets under the guise of popular support for the cause. And then the cause has gotten lost, right? Protest. I mean, believe what you hear and not what you see. Hence the card for today's show. Believe what you see and not believe what you hear and not what you see. Yet we continue to see violence, paramilitaries, mobs, marches, full scale marches. Do you guys see any hazmat? Anybody in hazmat suits or hazmat receptacles or, I've wondered about that. Shout out to the Lockhart perspective. She brought that up. But I have wondered for a long time, if we're dealing with something, if we were dealing with something at the level, with the threat, okay? What are we, a TTRS, how much time? What's the threat? The type of threat, the time of threat. What do we have? But you've yet to see. You would think you would see receptacles. I've been thinking that for a long time. You'd see receptacles everywhere. So if somebody does lose a mask, that it's disposed of properly, right? I mean, you wouldn't leave needles or any other type of biohazards in public spaces, right? There's receptacles, even in restrooms, for needles, anything that intravenous needles or something that goes over your nose and mouth. I'm saying, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe, I mean, what you would think that with all the calls for the equipment, the PPE, where are the bags? Where are the trash receptacles, the trash bags? And someone that's actually, you would imagine you would see trucks collecting these items, right? I haven't seen one. I'm just saying. Yeah, just saying. So, will we see more? I mean, is it up to us, the media? And for kicks, where is the KKK? Where is the KKK? And I'll get into that. Do they know the difference between, does this generation know, or do we the people know the difference between history and his story? What do we know? Do we know the difference between a freedom fighter and an SJW? Or is that just a living and breathing his story too? Because his story is being written right now. And I've mentioned this to you guys here. You might want to preserve, or catalog wherever you can, because in 25 years, I'm not sure what's going to be told about this. And I think it's kind of apropos that history will judge, da 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 da. And that's right on. His story will judge this, will tell this story, and that's pretty dangerous and pretty inconsistent, right? And so his story just keeps getting rewritten. It's nonstop in revision. It's a revisionist. His story will tell. They should put that in front of it. Just put that in front of it. Because, in fact, I've mentioned before, if you talk to anyone from the 50s, or that's still around for the 50s or 60s, they seem to tell a different his story when you ask about sit-ins or lunch counters or freedom fighters or the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and they tell a different story than what you've heard now. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much for taking care with the channelytics. I really appreciate you guys and all that you do. Welcome in the rapper 10,000. Yeah, I can see that without a doubt. So what's the this is my issue, okay? And I'm going to be honest, I think this is going to be part rant, it's going to end up being kind of a part rant, part regular show. I guess you guys say I'm probably due for one anyway, rant, rave, whatever you want to call it. But if the average American does something that leaves someone affected, either physically or impaired or financially harmed, we're subject to punishment under the law. And see, this is where things get hairy and ugly. Whether the people that seem to be exempt, I don't know, why is it that their voices appear to be higher ranking than ours? Or politicians, what they want, why is that higher ranking than what we want? Why are their concerns greater than those who live the life of outside of Washington or in politics? Why are their opinions high? Because they have the money to provide those opinions, because they have the money to assert what they want. Why is that? And see, this is what I'm talking about, playing by a different set of rules. If there is a law of the land, and only a small percentage of the elite, if they're not following it, then is anybody safe? Then what does that mean for the rest of us? And see, this is where I'm no revolutionary by any stretch, but you can start to see why people start to rebel. And there's civil disobedience, But then there's the radicalized civil disobedience. I mean, disobedience. I'll take that out. There's a radical, and when it's on a criminal level, that's when it's referred. It's the semantics are totally different. The context is totally different. Shout out to Killer Whale Channels. Thank you so much for coming in. So yes, shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Killer Whale Channels. Let the Truth Be Told. Chrysler Imperial H. The Rapper 10,000. So yes. And then you've got the thing that's really staggering is when you've got these members of Congress that are out here calling for the unrest in the street. When they say organize, galvanize, mobilize, what in the entire strawberry patch do you think they're talking about? They're not telling these people to go out and throw tomatoes. Catapult tomatoes on 3. Shout out to everybody in the stream. But I'm going to keep, believe it or not, I'm going to move on. I appreciate, thanks so much. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Thank you so much for coming in. So let's move on here. I appreciate you guys so much for coming in. And there will be a video coming out following this stream. I would say within 30 minutes. I appreciate you guys so much for coming in and all that you do. You guys are the best. You guys are the absolute best. So, with that said, let's move on here a bit. So, what I wanted to also, moving on here from the opening statement, thank you guys so much for tuning in. So, of course, I posed a lot of questions in that, but it's just, that's the thing that they don't want you to do. They don't want you to think. They want you to believe everything that you are told. If you see a guy standing in front of a blaze, there's no problem. Nothing to see here. There's a few people catapulting tomatoes in the background. That's all. Just protesters, they threw a tomato. But nothing to see here. Shout out to Alien Believers. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. So, I'm not a big person into the tweets and Twitters of the world, but why not? I thought, why not? Why not? So, we're going to take you to the first tweet. Sometimes I get I might get a bit mangled into twit. I might get into twit instead of tweet. Hope you guys are doing well on your Monday. So I'll be taking you over to the tweet. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to everybody that has just joined us from wherever you are. Hope you guys are having a great start to your week, or at least you have some optimism. Start your week. So yes, we're going to look at a tweet. So we've had quite a few things going on. And this is not my goal to pile on, because that's easy to do. And, the echo chambers, or you can find an echo chamber anywhere, but I begin to think it's more of a coping mechanism, because I posed a question earlier, where do we go from here? What is here? Where are we? So shout out to everybody in the stream. So I'm going to share this tweet with you guys. That's very beautiful from Alien Believers. He says, love and peace, everybody. Can't talk, but sending it this It's the same. Love and peace to you, alien believers. I hope you're doing well. Killer Whale Channel says, you say tomato, I say tomato. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. So we're going to look at a tweet here. Not big into, I'm not a co-signer on Hollywood by any stretch, but every now and then, you might hear some words of, I don't know, some logic, who knows? All right. So James Woods is what you see before you. Shout out to everybody in the stream. It's a tweet that I'm sharing from James Woods. All right. In this tweet, James Woods says, imagine if we still taught civics in schools, laws would be understood and respected. If people disagreed with them, they would learn the proper procedure to change them. Sadly, leaders started cherry picking only the laws they liked, and our republic began its inevitable decline. Well, Mr. Woods, I just want to look at this just for a second. Now, in terms of civics, of course, I concur, the education system. But the thing about it is, the thing here is that taught is the key, is the verb here, taught. A lot of things are taught. They're teaching hate, postmodernism. There is no such thing as civics. Because when you get into full-blown postmodernism, there's no truth, but see, that same sword they pick up that same sword that they want to cut you in half with, and they cut themselves in half. They cut themselves as soon as they cut their own hand off when they pick it up, because the same thing that they're arguing against is the same thing that destroys the argument. So if you're being taught the destruction, you're being taught ideology. You're being taught ideology. You're being taught demand the impossible, be reasonable, but demand the impossible. That's another story I'm going to get into, but not this show. That's another story. But we got the spirit of Bill Ayers in these streets, ladies and gentlemen. It's not new. When anybody harkens back to the 60s, we're talking about the Frankfurt schools. That's when that's from what I can tell, the civics is ceased to teach civics. And that's when you had all these isms. You had or these studies. You had all these studies. You had the women's studies, the African American, or maybe even the Negro studies, whatever they call them. You had the Chicano studies. You had all of these studies, LGB, or just LG studies. So you replaced civics with not civics. Is the antithesis of civics. And then, of course, that turned into, they found it more expedient to do. That's what you've got the confluence of right now. You've got a confluence of intersectionality. You got one person, we're fighting for racial equality. We're fighting for LGBTQ issues. We're fighting for feminists, and then make sure that person's not getting paid more. So eventually these groups, somebody's relegated. Well, they were relegated and when we talk about the 60s and the 70s and Vietnam, you had women. The only way they could kind of edge in was to be relegated to making coffee or making copies for the Weatherman Underground. That's what you had. And then they felt marginalized because, and then what did they do? We talked about corporeal presence. That almost speaks to some of my other things I'm going to do. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're keeping your spirits up. It's it's rough, It's rough. Touchdown, Sean. I voted for it. He made me black. Shout out to the Blind Guy Show. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I really appreciate it. So you have the wisdom of James Woods before you. So, you know, so yeah, that we were on the subject of civics, ladies and gentlemen. That we were on the subject of civics and the breakdown of civics and the breakdown of education and the breakdown of basically just teaching the youth to be miserable. Nothing has any value. We have Adorno, Horkheimer, the Frankfurt schools to thank for all of that. They basically took over those sociology departments back in the back east, and then they eventually came to California. They couldn't imagine anybody being happy, being just a pure form of happiness. They were nihilists themselves. And now you got this whole culture of nihilists running around. And, hey, they figured we're not in school, but we're getting our run. We can be activists and we can make a difference and we can change. And I'll tell you, this is another statement that I've made. We've talked about previously, in which, you guys remember Greta Thunberg. Well, Thunberg was the person of the year. And of course, according to the UN, children are the agents of change. Well, I could with what if they're being manipulated and being exploited, then yes, exactly. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So we're going to wrap up here with Mr. Woods. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. He at least called it out. He called out the schools. But, he also goes into the laws would be understood. And they don't, most kids don't know what the Bill of Rights, they don't know what the Bill of Rights are. They don't know what the Constitution says. They don't know what the Constitution says about the nation or its founding, or what it says about them individual, how it relates to them as an individual, the premise, the creed. They don't know any of that. It wasn't taught to me in schools. It wasn't. It's either it wasn't taught to me or I was a very poor student. Very, very poor student. I will not be convinced that I was a very poor student. I will not. I reject that. And the proper procedure to change them. Yes, that goes into the what happens in a civic society. That's why I'm a huge proponent on this show for advocating for people to seize your individual power and the self-governance from the county, city seats, because that's where your most accessible power is. That's where you have the most access. At the state level with these governors and the assemblies, that is a more remote level of power it's going to take you much more time to reach something like that or to be heard. I mean, I've written to my senator, and it takes 2 to 3 months, but then you get a prototype. You get a prototype kind of letter response. That's what you get. You get a template, a formality letter. But yeah, do I actually think Senator personally wrote that to me? No. Do I even know? Does she even know that they released that somebody actually responded to me? Negative. So that's where we get into the civics and being informed. Most people don't realize this is a constitutional republic. It's not a pure democracy because the pure democracies had failed. And the founding fathers knew that. And that even speaks to Clinton's ignorance when she gets out here. I'm like, my gosh, you were married to you went to college, right? It's almost like they pretend like they don't understand even what the Electoral College means. Popular vote versus the Electoral College. They pretend like they don't know what it means, because they don't know because they give false equivalencies. It keeps the masses where they are. Oh, well, so she won the most votes. She wins, right? Whoa, I'm not a civics teacher. I'm not. Thank you guys for listening, coming in. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Appreciate you guys. All right, so we're gonna move on here because I'm getting a little clunky here. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to the followers over at Periscope. Thank you so much for coming around and being a follower. If you guys are interested, check out Periscope. Thank you so much. So we're going to move right along here. So I thought maybe we'd go into the Ted Wheeler apartment. I guess, the mob decided they were going to occupy, the guy's apartment building, demanding his resignation. So let's move right on over to that. How's everybody doing in the stream? Thank you guys so much for taking care with the channelytics, and I really appreciate it. So we're going to move right on. The blind guy, before I do so, says maybe we all should vote. The rent is too damn high. Yes, I raised my hand. Yes. Yes. I appreciate that. Appreciate your honesty. So what we're going to do is we are going to move over to the Federalist for a little bit of Occupy Ted Wheeler's apartment building. How about that? All right, guys, and then we'll see a little bit of footage for you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. All right, so what you see before you comes from the Federalist. Some things going on here at the bottom of the screen. So, okay, into politics section of the Federalist. All right, this was written by Jordan Davidson on the 29th. The Portland protesters occupy Mayor Ted Wheeler's apartment building, demanding his resignation. A group of activist protesters organized a sit-in at Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler's apartment building on Friday, demanding that he, quote, reduce the Portland Police Bureau budget, commit to never voting for police budget increases again, and resign, end quote. How's that for a demand? All right. The demand letter also commands Wheeler, who it labels as, quote, a true embodiment of white supremacy, end quote, to, quote, complete abolition of the Portland Police Bureau by 2022 with no private or technological replacement, end quote, and redirect the money from the PPB into social programs. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Hope you guys are doing well. Hi, the rapper. Love your passion, the rapper. It's noted around here. I kid you not. It really is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that. We'll have a couple of clips. Let's see what happens. Okay, we got a tweet first. Garrison Davis, tear gas proof. Folks have locked themselves in the lobby of Mayor Ted Wheeler's apartment. Oh, saying they won't leave till the mayor comes and listens to their demands. Okay, so I think we have some footage on that. So we've got looks like we have four clips. Got 4 clips here, so let's dig in here. I appreciate you guys so much for all that you do. All right, so the thread here is sponsored by, I guess, Garrison Davis. Tear gas proof folks have locked themselves, so this comes from him. So you've got 4. Looks like you've got a Black Lives Matter poster or something there. You've got the doors here. You've got a little bit of a collage here. Outside the building, protesters dancing in the street in front of the Portland mayor's apartment. And then, of course, you've got the letter. Okay, so with that, they're dancing in front of the streets, dancing in the streets, not dancing on the ceiling. I don't know why I'm thinking of Lionel Richie. I don't know. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Okay, I'm having a little bit too much fun. A little bit too much fun with Twitter. So who knew, right? Who knew? Who knew that Twitter was so engaging? All right, so let me click on one of these and see what happens here. You can get a larger picture. No, you just get the same collage. Okay, so you've got your little collage there, and we're going to play the little party. It's just a little clip, just a little fun in the streets, summer of dancing, I guess, there. All right, guys, I'm going to show you that. I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but I'll be happy to share that particular clip with you. Hope you guys are doing well, and shout out to everybody in the stream. So I'm going to share that the little dance or whatever. Who knows what's going on in the Northwest coast. All kinds of things going on. The rapper, you don't miss the beat. All right, so let's bring you a little bit of that. Yeah, they're kind of doing this very. I don't know what else are they going to do? Crowd surf? I don't know. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So I don't know. You got to gear up when you're going to go and deal with. You got to gear up when you're going to go and deal with these protesters, peaceful protesters. Okay, so here comes the music for you. If you ever need one blood, I'll take you to Okay. Is that not fun for you? All right, guys, I appreciate everything you do. Yeah, but I'm saying at this point, to me at this point, they can blame all they want. They've been doing that for 4 years. They've been doing it for 4 years almost. There's nothing that's what I can't think of anything they haven't blamed the guy for. I can't. If it rains tomorrow during somebody's wedding, guess whose fault it is? It's just a little predictable. The stupidity is a little, they come straight ahead. These liberals, the Dems, the progressives, the, what do you want to call them? Never Trumpers, whatever. These people are predictable. Hi, Positively Penny. I don't know. Positively Penny. I don't know. It's rough. It's rough out here. So let's keep rocking. So you can see, I guess Wheeler's kind of getting, he's getting the benefits of caving to the mob. Yeah, see, I don't see the whole millennial kind of high, I'm not sure if that's where yeah, I guess so, school's out, you got to do your thing, right? Shout out to Touchdown Sean says they all look very young. I work in an institution that allows this same hellishness to go on. Like, it's okay. Yeah. I'm tracking. So So with that said, we're going to move on to the next one. So, and this is, I'm going to move to this one next because it kind of speaks to some of the mob rule. And I did a video on this, but we're going to move right along, take you to the next segment here. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. So let's go to, let's break it up here just a second. Let's go to the Gateway Pundit. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I appreciate you guys for all that you do. So let's have a quick look here. So we're going to look at, it looks like the CDC's release is just going under a pile, right? A pile of, I don't want to say rubble they've been saying, follow the science. How long have you heard that? But who's following the science? All right. So what you see before you is CNN and Twitter target President Trump, and the Gateway Pundit won't allow us to share the actual COVID numbers from the CDC website that don't fit their narrative. Okay. So according to this, the powers that be, the technocracy, CNN, Twitter are at it again. Today, CNN slandered President Trump and the Gateway Pundit and encouraged Twitter to take down a tweet based on CDC data that the president retweeted. CNN and Twitter don't want Americans to know the full truth about the... Okay, we'll get the sound effects for the next time. So last night, we posted an article on, you guessed it, shock report. This week, the CDC quietly updated the numbers. Only 9,210 Americans succumbed to the pandemic alone. They died. And the rest had different other serious illnesses. Okay, this is a big pharma at its best, I guess. The gist of the article is that the pandemic is not nearly as deadly as first projected by the WHO, the World Health Organization, and then by Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. All right, I have an update that it looks like the Department of Homeland Security it confirms that more federal agents may be sent to Portland. So we'll get to that just a second. So that's just in, okay? All right, based on the numbers this past week, only 6% of all deaths attributed to this pandemic were instances where the only factor in the individual's death was due to the COVID-19. Okay, I'm going to skip this ad. I don't know. Sorry about that, guys. This is not relevant, so of course not. But yes, so for all the other deaths reported by the CDC linked to the COVID-19, the individuals who passed away had 2 to 3 other serious illnesses or comorbidities. And this comes from actual data from the CDC. It was tweeted by Mel Q on Twitter. All right. So yes, this is Mel Q's tweet. So I don't know, I guess maybe they ripped it down. So this is Mel Q. Actually, what I will do, I will play the game, and I'm going to put this in the stream for you guys. So you guys can chew over it, or, do with it what you will. Reading is self-education. And nobody can do it all for anybody, right? Who did you trust to do all of it? Shout out to everybody in the stream. I appreciate you guys so much for coming in. Okay, so I'm going to drop that for you. Thank you guys so much for taking care with the stream. Okay, so there you go. Old head dues. Da-da-da. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Thank you so much for coming in, old head dudes. I appreciate you around here. All right. So they used Mel Q's tweet in the report, and the president of the United States retweeted Mel Q's tweet as well. But accordingly, today, on that day, as Twitter took down the tweet. They notified Mel Q that the tweet that used actual CDC data, quote, violated their policy on misleading information about COVID-19. Her account was suspended from posting for 12 hours. All right. So then you get CNN that piles on. This is next. CNN wrote an article about this calculation and the president's retweet, and our article entitled "Twitter Removes QAnon Supporters' False Claim About the Death Stats That Trump Retweeted." So, of course, here's CNN. They can't, I don't know how anybody watches that. But let me just get back to the screen here. Okay, so Twitter has taken down a tweet containing a false claim about the death stats. That was made by a supporter of a baseless QAnon conspiracy theory, a post that President Trump retweeted earlier in the day. So I guess the CDC, they don't, now nobody trusts the CDC. It's, you can't make this stuff up. So, you guys can chew on that. What else do we expect? It says in CNN's very first sentence, they make a false premise. CNN claims a male accused tweet was false, but that is not true. It's based on actual CDC data from the CDC website. So that's the thing, these opposed duty fact checkers. You have to laugh to not get aggravated with what's going on. You really do. And in their third paragraph, CNN claims our post and tweet about the topic is false as well. Next, CNN uses liberal logic and assumptions as the basis for Mel Q's tweet, and our posts are incorrect. So you guys can chew over that, the stats on it. You can even go somewhere else. This is, you go somewhere else for information, but this is all the buzz, it seems, about the weekend, and it would be pretty earth-shattering, I would imagine. CNN makes the assumption that we were saying none of the other 94% of deaths classified as COVID-19 deaths were not COVID-19 related deaths. That is not what we said. What we did say is that only 9,201 deaths were related only to, that word. All right, so CNN then makes the broad statement that 94% of the deaths listed had at least one additional factor. This is true, but the CDC is clear that the average number of other issues or morbidities, yikes, related to the deaths they counted as COVID-19 deaths is 2.6, meaning most people who died at closer to 3 other, quote, conditions or causes related to their death. So, here we go. Many people have been saying for months. Many people have been saying this for months, and many people have conceded to the word, the two words that today, the buzzwords or buzz phrases, racism, or when they want to shut you down, they throw out the racist, or they say, "Oh, it's a conspiracy theory." So that's what we've been reduced to. Okay, that's what's going on there. Once again, I thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you guys so much for coming in. So, the thing about it is, when in this situation, who can actually trust any of this? Not just the sources, but the human resources. Who can trust any of these people? How do you restore the people's trust with this much inconsistency? You got, they talk about data and the science. Well, it's been incomplete presentations, because even if you get a prognosis, you get the full prognosis on anything, right? If it's a cold, or I'm throwing out some shingles or lupus, whatever, you get a prognosis, full prognosis, or at least a full picture, a full scale, full scope. We've used that word a few times around here. We bounce it around a few times. But a viable report. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Okay, so I'm gonna move on here, guys. I appreciate everything. Thank you guys so much for coming in and taking care with the Channelytics, and shout out to my friends. Shout out to my friends on Periscope. I appreciate you guys. Okay. All right. So I just want to check really quick here. Let me just see what's happening what's happening in the ranks. All right. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Touchdown Sean says, just put a giant trash bag over the CDC, CNN, and the entire city of Atlanta. Yeah. Big hazmat bag. All right. So let's move right along. So let's go back we're going to talk about what I have now for you. It would be a clip we're getting back to the mob and to, believe in what you see, believe in what you hear instead of what you see. So we're going to go over to Vernon Jones. Now, we did show a clip of Mr. Jones being accosted after the RNC. He was accosted by many. And yeah, shout out to everybody in the stream. So let's go there. Thank you guys so much for all that you do.
Violent mob. Hello, America. I'm Representative Vernon Jones from Georgia. And I'm just here just thinking about and playing over and over again in my mind about what happened when we left the White House after the president had given this great speech on his record and what he had accomplished for this country the first 4 years and what he wanted to do for America the next 4 years, only to be met by a violent mob of supporters of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. These were Democrats, Black Lives Matter, Antifa folks. And what they were doing and the threats, and by the way, let me be clear, my life was threatened and others' lives were threatened. And when I hear that foolishness from the liberal media, that it was mostly peaceful, where in the hell were they when my life was threatened and others' lives were threatened? Thank God for those police officers, because had not been for them, I don't know if I would be talking to you now or any other time. And when I hear Joe Biden and the Democratic Party and Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Kamala Harris turn their backs on law enforcement, they are out of their minds. And where's the liberal media? Why haven't they reached out to me and to others and allowed us to share our experiences, the threats that we experienced, so the American people can see firsthand what happened? But they won't, because they support with the Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris destruction our cities. They want to see it demolished so they can blame it on Donald Trump. If this had been the other way around and Biden supporters were attacked by Trump supporters, it would have been all over the network. But that's okay. You and I both know there's only one person and one force that stands between chaos and community, and that's Donald Trump and his leadership. So let's be a part of that silent majority. If you're Black, white, Democrat, or Republican, let's go and elect Donald Trump and let's save America.
All right, guys. So there you have it. As they say, you got it from the horse's mouth. Don't listen to me. But the thing about it, it's not going to happen. You haven't heard anybody from the left denounce, or you haven't heard anyone, renounce or condemn these, what I call paramilitaries, these organizations, these little armies. You have not heard the Dems do that. Now, I have heard Don Lemon talk about, well, he needs to say something about the protest. Oh, now they need to say something about the protest? But for a while, there was no protest. I mean, what are you talking about? What you for a long time they denied that there was any form, any shape or form of protest. So how do you go from that because it's not working? And then at one point you were hearing the rhetoric that the protest, some of these people came out saying that they needed the even Obama, if I'm not mistaken, he was quoted. Let me fact check myself here just a second. They needed, it was, the quote went something like, I'm paraphrasing, that these protests are necessary for Biden to win. I mean, for months, what, we're 6 months into these protests? I mean, honestly, and all of a sudden Trump is rooting for more violence. But let me just I'm going to take the liberty and show you something right now. I may have shown you this. I may have shown you this previously, but you've had members of the squad say, even Speaker Pelosi. I mean, I don't even call these people, to me, I don't know how these people have positions. I don't know how they have a job. If you incite violence on your job, don't you get released? If you get arrested, or if you're colluding, you get arrested, right? But they're above the law, right? I mean, Pelosi said that, that Trump's the enemy of the state. I'm telling you guys, this is partially where my rant might begin, because I heard somebody else say, I mean, you've got to be completely delusional if you think that November 3rd, this is all going to cease and we're all going to skip merrily along, and it's not going to happen. And if I'm wrong, I'll come back on here and say that I'm wrong. But to be honest, I don't think it's going to stop if they're attacking the politicians now, I'm thinking it doesn't matter who's there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. So let me just show you this. Now, who's calling? Who's calling for it? Who's calling for what? You don't have to be Columbo. But everything, if you're not paying attention, everything's fine, right? Everything's fine. Okay, so here we go. I mean, Pelosi has been unhinged for a while now, so
trying to interfere.
She started by tearing up the speech, State of the Union address, after the impeachment collapse. It's just debauchery. It's just been a mess. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this. This is MSNBC. Some say MSDNC.
Interfere in our election, but they're not the only ones. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States. But again, let's just get out there, mobilize, organize, and not let the press.
All right, word games. Mobilize, organize. You name it, right? What do you think that means? What do you think that means? Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to JT Waterman. Good morning to you. So what do you think that means? I mean, how many more? The projection is all that they do. Somebody that once said, if you want to know what their crimes are, just find out what they're accusing you of. And that's it. I think that's pretty spot on. So we'll finish here with Pelosi.
President deter anybody from voting. And again, support the postal system, which is election central. They're doing everything they can. Suppress the vote with your actions, scare people, intimidate by saying law enforcement will be there, diminish the role of the postal system in all of this. It's really actually shameful. Enemies.
All right, guys, I appreciate it so much. So there you had, that's there's your feast your ears on the projection there. Okay. So I'm going to take you to the next segment here. Hope everybody's doing well. All right. So we're getting into what I've talked about previously on here. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. Hope you guys are doing well. All right. So the next topic, our next and final segment for today, it's going to deal with education. And this was published actually a couple of weeks ago, but no less, school's in, right? Or it's going in some form, whether virtually or whether you're going back in mask, however your kids are going back to school. So this is going to come from the vetted source, The New American. Comes from our vetted source, The New American. So I'm going to give you a little infomercial here as usual. Hope you guys are doing well. All right. So this segment of our show is brought to you by JBS. Our good friends, the JBS, that's the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. Now, the JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that has been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education and training and development of the American voters. So shout out to everybody in the stream, and I will be sharing this with you. This comes from Michael Tennant of the TNA. He's a writer for the TNA. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Thanks so much for coming in. So with that said, I'm going to share that with you. All right. So I think this should give anybody pause, whether you have kids or not. It's like if an educated society is what we need, you can see what happens. It's actually, what's happening is the antithesis of educating. So what's going on? So here, according to this, let me paraphrase a little bit. A Philadelphia public school teacher recently fretted on Twitter that virtual classrooms might not allow parents to interfere with teachers propagandizing on behalf of anti-racism and pro-LGBT causes. Okay, according to this, Matthew Kay, an English teacher at the Science Leadership Academy, a Philadelphia magnet school, posted a thread on Twitter Sunday that began, quote, "So this fall, virtual class discussions will have many potential spectators, parents, siblings, etc., in the same room. We'll never be quite sure who is overhearing the discourse. What does this do for our equity and inclusion work?" Whoa, what does that do? Quote, "How much have students depended on the somewhat secure barriers of our physical classrooms to encourage vulnerability?" He continued, quote, "How many of us have installed some version of what happens here stays here to help this?" All right, I hope you guys are catching this. Okay. In other words, K is worried that he is teaching his students things of which their parents or other family members may not approve. And that now that they will have a chance to observe his classes, they may counter his teaching, remove their children from his classes, or even jeopardize his job. What specific teachings does K fear parents will not like? He explained, while conversations about race are in my wheelhouse and remain a concern in this no walls environment, I am most intrigued by the damage that, quote, helicopter slash snowplow, end quote, parents can do in honest conversations about gender slash sexuality. And while, quote, conservative, end quote, parents are my chief concern, I know that the damage can come from the left too. If we are engaged in the messy work of destabilizing a kid's racism or homophobia or transphobia, how much do we want their classmates' parents piling on? It is clear then that K seeks to overturn traditional conservative opinions regarding race, homosexuality, and transgenderism, and he doesn't want any parents, even those who consider themselves liberal, but are insufficiently, quote, woke, end quote, on such issues, getting in the way. Kay hasn't made many public pronouncements on LGBT issues. He did tell the Teacher's Corner podcast in March that he has an, quote, LGBT safe space, end quote, sticker on his classroom door. But he has been very outspoken concerning race. He even wrote a book, Not Light, But Fire, How to Lead Meaningful Race Conversations in the Classroom. As far as Kay is concerned, everything about race and anyone who denies this proposition, particularly the false notion that white people are guilty of systemic racism, is an obstacle to a world of racial justice, end quote. Quote, my book operates from frank understanding that at a certain point, a teacher's refusal to acknowledge how race impacts our students' lives is willful, end quote. He blogged in June, educators, from him, quote, educators, administrators, and policymakers who remain steadfast in their colorblindness have chosen myopia. It takes more effort now than in recent memory to not see race, end quote. In an interview with Education Week, Kay said, frankly, I doubt the sincerity of most teachers who claim to not see, quote, race. I hear this claim from people who seek to be absolved of the responsibility to handle racial topics with compassion, thoughtfulness, and rigorous reflection. People who do not, quote, see race and, quote, conveniently find themselves never needing to get better at anything. The claim is dishonest. They, quote, see, quote, it just fine. The teachers who, quote, see race and feel no need or desire to bring it into their lessons, I earnestly ask you, quote, why don't you, end quote. In his blog, Kay pointed to what he sees as, quote, intractability of individual colleagues' racism, end quote, and declared, quote, sometimes you have just got to step over them, end quote. As the American conservatives' Rod Dreher put it, quote, he doesn't want to change his opponents' minds, but plow right over them, end quote. To end this, likewise, he'd prefer to be able to fill his students' minds with the latest social justice propaganda without having to worry about interference from their parents. Quote, this approach destroys the kind of trust that has to exist between teachers and parents for the school to be successful, end quote, remarked Dreher. Quote, it is an outrageous exploitation of teachers' relationship to minor students and a violation of the parents' trust. Apparently, some other folk felt the same way because the furor over Kay's tweets caused him to make his Twitter account private. By then, however, the truth had gotten out. Teachers are trying to indoctrinate students behind their parents' backs. At least the parents of K students now have fair warning. All right, if that wasn't enough for you to chew on, shout out to everybody in the stream. So yes, if you have children that are going back to school, or if your children are even engaging in if they will be contained to a Zoom style or virtual style classroom or learning environment, then if you are home, you will be seeing what's being taught Now, I personally, to me, many of these kids don't have the perception, or they don't have the experience to be dealing with some of these issues that they're bringing in, most of them. And they're doing it with the cartoons. I mean, what was it Billy Porter has been on the steps of Sesame Street. You've had Arthur not too long ago had some segment. And yeah, and so you have, like I said, we're not going to get into UNESCO today, but we will do it another time. But UNESCO and all the laws that are or that have been the resolutions, or the not resolutions, but the measures that are being passed, or the changes in the curriculums, are headed to, a state or city or county school near you. So I would encourage you to, for those of you that have children that are attending public schools, don't think these teachers are going to bring their intent to your door. You just in this article, that kind of mantra, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, what happens in the classroom stays in the classroom. No, as they say, no, ma'am, no, sir. No, it does not. No. So yes, but here again, there's that whole elitism. Who is this guy K to think he can tell anybody anything about race? Why don't you just teach people to be decent human beings and to treat others with dignity and respect? You don't have to love everybody, but you do need to respect them. But it is not upon him to do anything, to handle anything on race. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, it's not on him. He shouldn't be handling any of those subjects. A question for me. And guess who? It's from the rapper. Rapper says, do you think a class action lawsuit can be filed against the schools for this propaganda? The rapper, do I think a class action? It can. But as I've said before, when you've got these ideologues writing, not only are they writing the books, they're training the teachers. It just doesn't go anywhere. You've got the whole system. To me, shout out to everybody in the stream. It is the definition of anarchy. How are you doing? The definition. Nice to see you. You guys get to know each other around here. I'm going to drop this link because we're going to pack this one in about 15 minutes. But I'm just going to drop this out here. Anybody has anything to say, you can have your opportunity. I'll give you 2 to 3 minutes. Yikes, what happened there? Oops. 2 to 3 minutes here. Call in, chime in. There you go. Of course, keep your community standards in mind if you choose to do so. And I'd like to have you guys. So yeah, so this is, this is your society. The effects of education heavily influence society. But at one point, I think about extending the school day to like 12 hours. I think that came from Harris. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I just, to me, I just think these people that's why I don't believe it's the public's responsibility to educate kids. And then that goes, and if I say that, there's specific things that that's not their responsibility. No worries, definition. I appreciate you. You guys. Shout out to the definition of anarchy. He's a great supporter and he has a solid channel, great content creator. And get to know him. Get to know everybody here. Even though it's not a growth stream, I always, kindred spirits everywhere. You never know. So check it out. guys get to know each other around here. If it's somebody that I'm not connected to, like the Blind Guy show, I'm not sure if I'm connected to you, but I will check it out. Hope everybody's doing well. But the thing is they just you don't need to, because it's going to cause a lot of hostilities. Like many kids play so indifferently. They engage and interact so indifferently until one day somebody tells them that somebody makes the emotional and psychological creates a discernment that they have to process. Until that, you see kids playing all the time. The younger they are, they just have a blast, and there's an innocence. So why would I don't care what level, kindergarten, middle school, whatever, high school, why would any of these people be injecting any type of social engineering into these kids' classrooms? This same moron is out there. He'll be apologizing in 20 years if his ideology makes the books and actually damages people for generations. And many times you find people that are making these laws and creating all these ideas and all this engineering. Many of them don't even have children. That's the staggering part about it. You don't have kids. They're not your kids. They're not the state's kids. They're not wards of the state. So, he is posting all this stuff. You've got I'm sure they're going to have BLM stuff all over. Honestly, for those that are not paying attention, it's just fine. Okay. If you're one of those people, then everything's good in the neighborhood. It's just fine, right? But I said, hands off the socio-emotional, the engineering of these kids. Leave the kids alone. But they know if they condition these kids, if they do a really great job, that they're going to start to get, in 20 years, things will be worse than they are. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I mean, and the rapper, I'm just thinking, that you probably could, but how are you, that's the thing about lawsuits. They take time. They take money, but there are just so many, when to get to the height of these problems, of how these things happen, you've got to have you would have to have all of these systems on board, all of these institutions. When you got all institutions and many institutions in society succumbing to all of these ideologies, the school would be just one component. They are literally trying to get everybody to think. They want a monolith of ideologues, and they want to promote this agenda. You've got Black genocide going on, and people just sucking it up like a vacuum. You've got social engineering going on, destroying society. I don't know how anybody can be complacent. I mean, I don't, but you do. You have complacency, and to me, that's how we get to where we are. So if I thought, honestly, a lawsuit, will it hurt them in the pockets? But then the whole system would have to be, I don't know if you mean like a huge class action. I just don't, you would almost have to, these colleges, you would have to, I don't know. It's too big of this has been decades in the making We didn't get here overnight. We can't arrest. You can't even arrest all of these, all of the players, because there's just too many, and they are active. I told you guys the other week, I saw the credit union all of a sudden has rainbows all over it, and a child wearing a T-shirt in the commercial. What does the credit union have to do, and a kid being in the commercial with a T-shirt promoting? I mean, you can't talk about, I don't think you can talk about LGBTQ without talking about sexuality. You can't. And they say they're not promoting. Well, but how would you bring that to the table? So there again, that's a curriculum. That's a whole nother curriculum, and they're bringing that curriculum to the schools. In fact, I think California is tends to lead in these things. Between California and New York, what can I say? It's UNESCO. You got to look at you. I mean, we'll get into UNESCO. It's just it's a lot. So I'll give you a brief on this. Well, the rapper, it's beyond waking up. Wake up is, hate is stronger than waking up. Okay. It's like a drug. Some people cannot stop. They cannot stop being a part of their own demise, or they cannot get off the plantation. They cannot stop voting Democrats. Yeah, to think about it, it's one if you could stop voting Democrats, or think, but it's something mindless, they do. All right, so the deal is, shout out to everybody that's in the stream. I'm going to do one little piece on this, a little bit on this UNESCO situation. And then I'm going to pack us up and fold us in. I appreciate you guys so much and all that you do here on the channel, and hope you guys are staying strong and staying in the fight. Actually, I have something that's I'm going to play something for you. We'll get into, I could go into some of this, but this is actually Jacob Booyans. And I think he has a pretty good, it's kind of a little bit of length on this one, but we'll get into a little bit of this. I don't know if they'll yank it down, but we'll give it a go. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So here we go, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Welcome, everybody. It's been a long time coming. World Health Organization video number 2. You watched number 1. If you have not watched number 1, go watch it, because we talk about what the World Health Organization is doing in the realm of comprehensive sex ed. This video is about what's happening in the United States, who's doing it. It's already here, folks. So I'm just going to give you a couple reminders, throw this on the screen. Remember, the World Health Organization with UNESCO drafted a baseline for curriculum for kids around the world in conjunction with Planned Parenthood. Why is Planned Parenthood always involved in targeting children? Because there's money involved. You'll see later that later on children get referred back to Planned Parenthood. All right. The Christian Institute, I'm going to throw this up to you just to remind you, this was in the first video. The World Health Organization wants kids under 4 to be taught about masturbation and gender identity. That was the 6th of May, 2020, in the middle of COVID. Okay. These are facts. I want to read this to you real quick. and you need to pay attention to these organizations, the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education for the World's Children. That was drafted by the WHO with Planned Parenthood, UNESCO, and then, of course, they brought the CDC in and a very important organization called SIECUS, SIECUS, a U.S. education government organization that helped draft these curriculum. Now, these curriculum are comprised of books. So the CSE, the Comprehensive Sex Ed mindset, is comprehensive sex ed. That sounds very good, but what's in it? We're going to unveil that to you here real quick. Let me read to you a quote from UNESCO, which is the United Nations that helped draft this curriculum that's in the United States, okay? Quote from them: young people want and need sexuality and sexual health information as early as comprehensively possible. That's debatable. Do young people want sexuality? Young people meaning kindergartners, right? Children should have agency in their own sexual practices and relationships. No, they should not. A 4, 5, 6, 10-year-old shouldn't have agency on what they want to do sexually. The parents have agency, of course, not to exploit or abuse the child, but to protect the child. Comprehensive sexuality education can help children form respectful and healthy relationship with sexual partners. That is exactly what we do not want. We do not want children to have sexual relationship with sexual partners. This is straight from UNESCO, the United Nations. This curriculum is in 29 states of the United States. It is the law, mandatory in 2 of the 29 states, and the other 27 are taking it to their floor to vote on making it mandatory in public schools. I continue to quote from the WHO: children have sexual feelings even as early as infancy. The WHO quote: between the 2nd and 3rd year of their lives, they discovered the physical difference between men and women. Of course they do. That doesn't mean you need to exploit them. During this time, children start to discover their own bodies. Early childhood masturbation. Pause. I've got young kids under 5. No, they do not discover masturbation. You're pushing this on them in the classroom. And if a child were to discover that, that is a parental conversation at home to guide and steer that child, not to indoctrinate and manipulate that child in the classroom, right? And they may also try to examine the bodies of their friends. We do not want that, all right? Progressive groups, including Planned Parenthood, collaborated on a bill in California called AB 329. Governor Newsom signed this thing into law, okay? It is called the Health Education Framework in California. So please, now that your kids are going to go back to school, you need to take these sizzle words: Health Education Framework, Comprehensive Sex Ed, some of these other technical guidance to sexuality. And you have to go ask your principals, are we teaching this curriculum? Are we endorsing this curriculum? In California, it's mandatory throughout public schools. In Washington State, Governor Inslee, on the 27th of March this year, in the middle of COVID, when parents could not protest, signed this into law in Washington State. It's in 29 states. The other states are voting on it to become legal. Texas, they're voting on this the 2nd of September. It would be the first time in 2 decades that there's sex ed reform in Texas, and they want to push this curriculum into Texas. Wake up. You better show up, Texas, and vote against this. You do not want this in your kid's classroom. Lawmakers create the California Healthy Youth Act. It sounds so good, guys. Don't be duped by the names and the banners. They fly these things normally in under the LGBTQ movement because politicians are scared to death to vote against anything LGBTQ. And it's not fair to the LGBTQ community either. I'm not a hypocrite. They don't endorse this. I've spoken to many of their members. They don't endorse exploiting children this way in the classroom. So look out for State Bill 329 in California, State Bill 5395 in Washington. Governor Inslee, you signed that bill when parents were in lockdown. Why then? Why when they were in lockdown? Okay, so let's talk about the books inside the curriculum. What are your child actually being taught in the classroom in the United States, 29 states? And we will reveal the list of the states that have received funding for this already. And remember, Planned Parenthood is driving the train on this thing. Okay, it's called the Comprehensive Sex Ed. Here are the books. What's Happening to My Body for Boys? What's Happening to My Body for Girls? Changing You is for kindergarten through 3rd grade. It's a guide to sexuality. Kindergarten. Guide to Sexuality. And I'm going to quote for you from the curriculum so you see what's in it. Okay. Sex, Puberty, and Stuff is another book. The Health Education Framework, Healthy Gender Development, and then, of course, the great book in this movement internationally, this book. It is Perfectly Normal. We'll put that on the screen. No, it's not perfectly normal. And this book is for 10-year-olds. And let me tell you something. It's porn, what's in this book. It is porn. It's illustrated, it's animated, but it's pornography. Too much, too soon in a young mind, all right, corruptible mind, it's pornography, all right? They hail this book as their grand champion, all right? So let's dive into some of the things that's happened because people say, Jaco, where are your facts? Is there any media on this? Let's look at the Daily Signal. We're going to hold these up for you. The Daily Signal says California implements extreme new sex ed curriculum. This is 11 months ago. California Board of Education, and please, you've got to go to your boards of education and ask them to stop exploiting children. This is grooming in the classroom. Nobody worth their salt in the anti-sex trafficking movement, right, will disagree that this is desensitization. This is how you groom kids in a classroom. This is how you plant a seed, which is a weed, by the way, and weeds grow in any garden, okay? You plant a seed of sex and it's thwarted. It's pushing it to gender neutrality, moral fluidity, right? Early sexual experimentation, and it corrupts your child, and it does absolutely make your child a softer target online for predators. There's no question about it, okay? Many doctors have gone against these states' boards of education and said, come on, you're corrupting the youth. They ignore them, okay? Let's look at mainstream media here. This is protest in California. Throw this up for you, okay? That is a picture of a little girl named Angie. She's 4. California's new sex ed guidelines encourage teachers to talk to students about gender identity and masturbation. Critics say the new guidelines are an assault on parental rights and expose children to ideas about sexuality. Remember, the World Health Organization said the child should have agency over their sexual activity. All right? This child is saying, protect my innocence and my childhood. Parents did show up in California, but it was a little short and a little bit too late. You need to fight. California, you got to fight. Washington, you got to fight. Governor Inslee and Newsom, you need to recalibrate. You're off on this. You're literally exploiting children. This is not good, okay? The health boards and state boards of education, you need to get your minds right. The Federalist, throw that up for you. The Federalist writes the following. Another reason to ditch the World Health Organization is its shocking sex propaganda for kids. The World Health Organization is an avid supporter of the so-called children's sexual rights movement, which sexualizes kids. And then they say President Trump was right to defund them. If you look at that picture the Federalist had up there, in the classroom, you get a little stickman figure and you got to color him in and you got to pick the gender of the child. It's called the genderbread man. And then you pick the sexual organ and you can change it day to day. Sick. They push fluidity. They push moral fluidity. They're anti-God. They're anti-country. They're anti-family. They're anti-father stay home. Right? And it's all about having kids that are dysfunctional. And many of you say, Jaco, you're conservative. You only work with conservatives. No. This is the Los Angeles Times. We do not politicize this issue. Okay? Los Angeles Times writes, controversial sex education framework for California approved despite protest. Okay? Parents do not stand for this, but the lawmakers didn't listen. Okay? This parent says too much too soon. The framework is mind corrupting. AB 329 is bad law. The framework is sick, twisted. Okay? Now let me quote from the curriculum for you. Now there's many, of course. Now remember, 4 and up. 4, 10, and then, of course, middle school and high school. So I'm quoting from the curriculum for you. Almost everyone, and this is for under 10-year-olds, okay? Almost everyone has sexual fantasies. Pause. Why do you need to talk to a child under the age of 10 about sexual fantasies? There's adult married couples that do not engage in role play and these kind of things, okay? We may have them while we're masturbating and at other times too. Now, remember, they're introducing masturbation early. Now they're talking about you need to have fantasies while you masturbate. Where do you think that's going to lead? That's going to lead to pornography, 100%, because the child is going to research sexual fantasies on YouTube, on Google. And what do you think Pornhub is going to push to them? One of our strongest cases we have at the moment is a child that got hooked on porn and is trafficked through an Xbox game with online live play and live chat. Okay. Sexual fantasies can be rich and a varied way of experimenting with your sexual self. They're glorifying sexual fantasies to kids under 10. Same curriculum, okay, has this in it. Now, I'm going to warn you. This is controversial, okay? This is shocking and it's graphic. But they're teaching your child in the classroom sexual slang for women's body parts, derogatory language to women's body parts, talking dirty bedroom talk that I would argue most wives would slap their husbands, okay, if they did that, right? They go further. They ask, is masturbation a sin or morally wrong? They say one person's idea of what's sinful or morally wrong may be quite different from another person's. No, morality is not fluid. You're pushing fluidity and morality. Nowadays, most people do not think masturbation is morally wrong or sinful. Personally, they don't think so either. They say in the past, many religions held masturbation as a sin. Now they bring religion into it. They pick one religion, though. They could have picked all of the religions because sexual immorality is in all walks of life. Child sex trafficking doesn't profile gender, race, class, socioeconomic status, but they pick the Catholic religion. Why? Because society has been desensitized to what has happened in the Catholic Church, but it happens everywhere. But here's what they're saying. Catholic religion's official point of view holds that masturbation is a sin. This does not mean that the Catholics or even Catholic priests feel this way. Okay? Now you got a problem because now they're telling the child the church thinks it's a problem, but the priest doesn't. Think about the MO here, okay? If you're bothered, I'm quoting, guys, if you're bothered by the notion that masturbation may be sinful or morally wrong, perhaps you should have a talk with your priest. Why not a talk with your parent? Why are you teaching the child masturbation in the classroom and then telling him his priest doesn't think it's a problem, but he can go talk to his priest? It goes further. They have testimonials in this curriculum. I'm going to read a part of a testimony to you. I will not read the whole thing because it's so graphic. Some men were interviewed and described orgasms as great. So this is a testimony about orgasm. One man said it perfectly. They say, well, it feels like there's some sort of a neat sensation in my genitals that builds and goes off. And I'm going to pause there. He then gets graphic on ejaculation. Okay. And then he ends with this. Afterwards, I feel a tingling and then relaxed all over. Says, will age 46. And I'm going to pause. Why? And I'm going to keep it up. Why do we have a testimony from a 46-year-old man to a child under 10 about his orgasmic experiences? You got to step up, parents. It's time to take this fight to the school boards. There's more things coming. We're going to talk to you about Planned Parenthood passing secret abortion bills. We're going to talk about California passing a transgender equity fund for sterilization of children. We're going to talk about what's happening at Senate level. There's a lot more we're going to bring you, and we are going to post this list on a separate post. We're going to post the list of the 29 states that currently have CSE in it. Fight for the children. Your voice is so important. God bless you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment. I appreciate everything you guys do. And I'm not sure if that was helpful for you or if that was enlightening for you, but there's, certainly it gives pause to most. So I hope everybody's doing well and hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. I appreciate you guys for coming in, and I do apologize once again for being late. Thanks for all you do, and keep an eye on your community tabs for merch, more live streams, flash streams, moonlight streams, and much, much more. And there is a video coming out hopefully within an hour. So Look forward to see you guys again. Have a great rest of your Monday.